Pardesi Beats. What's up, everybody? You're watching and listening to Pardesi Beats Unplugged, which is just the new evolution of Pardesi Beats. It's a mix of the original Pardesi Beats, if you guys know what that is. We'll explain it in a second. And Pardesi Beats Powerplay, which was a show about sports around the world based on the Edmonton area and going outwards from there. So a lot of Edmonton Oilers talk and a lot of global sports as well. And then the regular Pardesi Beats show is just, music and entertainment based on current Punjabi music and sometimes Bollywood based on, depending on the Punjabi artists in it. Mainly Punjabi music focused. So this is episode 1, which is almost like an interesting way to look at it. We did do a special edition episode 0. So if you guys didn't see that one yet, you guys can go back and check that out. Today, our executive producer Sada VIP Banda Dhadwal is not with us. He has the allergy season hitting him pretty hard. And what's that?
Rest in peace.
No, man. He's, you know what? If I'm feeling the allergies pretty hard too right now. And so, I mean, if they want to sponsor us, they can. But shout out to Claritin, who's been keeping me alive for many years.
Yeah,
and Benadryl, who's been resuscitating me when need be. But yeah, guys, we're in the Edmonton, Northern Alberta, Canadian region, which suffers from a springtime ailment for the allergy sufferers, I mean to say, of snow mold. So when all our snow melts, it leaves this gross snow mold on the surface of the land, and it causes people like me and Dhadwal a lot of pain and suffering. But at the end of the day, we're here with you guys for episode 1. Dhadwal will be back with us for the next episode. And last week we sort of did episode 0, which was a special edition episode, kind of like comic books. But in that episode, we introduced who we are, what we're doing. We're just going to do that real quick with you guys. So if you guys have been avid Pardesi Beats followers, listeners on the radio stations that we've been on, you guys know what we're all about, and you guys are here with us now. And we thank you for, supporting us back then and here now. We've been on air unofficially since 2007, officially since 2012. Don't ask, put that in the comments. Maybe I'll tell you guys what that means. But here we are, unplugged from the radio and from the mainstream media systems with our own independent video and podcast format called Pardesi Beats Unplugged. Usually with us, and as you may have heard on the radio, we have Dhadwal, obviously myself, Patwant Singh, and the two hosts that join us for Pardesi Beats Powerplay are now here with us on Pardesi Beats Unplugged. Khushwant Singh and Simran Kharal. I don't know if my windows are reflecting yours, but I'm pointing based on mine. And so, boys, I'll let you guys introduce yourselves real quick. Whoever wants to go first can jump in.
Simran, yeah. What's up? I'm Simran. I watch way too much hockey, and I spend too much time on Twitter.
That's not a bad thing.
Yeah.
Simplified, but it's good. It's good Twitter content if you want to see somebody rage.
Yeah. That's pretty much all it is. And if I'm not doing either of those two things, then I'm building stuff. That's about it.
So look at all the Adi in the background there, the saws. So that's cool. I mean, this could turn into a horror movie, Simran, but
very easily. Yeah, we have all the equipment.
So Simran, if you have, you've been with us on Pardesi Beats Powerplay for a while. Now we're and you've always been sort of a guest host and contributor on Pardesi Beats here and there through the years. So
I'm here for the hot takes. That's what I'm here for, right here.
I'm here for the hot takes.
We're here to talk shit about Mickey Singh, whatever you want.
And that's what the show's about, guys. So our traditional format was talk about Punjabi music. Here's the newest music. Blah, blah, blah. And then on Mondays, we used to do Pardesi Beats Powerplay, which was about the Edmonton Oilers and sports otherwise. So here it's going to be a little bit more relaxed, unplugged. And Khushwant Singh, let us know a little bit about yourself.
Yes, that's the name, Khushwant Singh. I've been frequenting the show for a long time as well, in its infant stages, just whatever, talking about Seva initiatives back in the day when I was in university. So lots of different things, lots of different topics. Halloween specials, boots. Ooh, speaking of the saws in the background, right? Like who knows what we maybe will see some sneaky and weird stuff in the back there, Simran. You never know. Anyways, like yeah, so I've been a part of the show for a while. Sports, love it. Big passion for sports, all sports, not just hockey. As you know, we are Canadians in Edmonton. Obviously, hockey is a strong thing, but I personally have a passion for like almost every other sports.
Yep.
Not that's mainstream, maybe you could say. I don't want to say everything because you know I'm not watching croquet matches or whatever.
Hey, this is the Ocho.
Yeah. So, anyways, so yeah, I'm just excited to kind of put this show onto a podcast platform and a watching platform like on YouTube, if you guys, wherever you guys are watching. So it'd be pretty fun, and I'm excited to kind of keep the conversation going. And now it's like a little bit more interactive, hopefully with our audience, and just kind of see what you guys have to say as well.
Yeah. So for those of you that, you're listening, because these podcasts, maybe not as quickly as YouTube, but these podcasts are going to be on all the major podcast avenues as well, audio in terms of audio format. But we're on YouTube, Pardesi Beats Unplugged. You can search us up. Channel's just called Pardesi Beats. But yeah, same thing on all the podcast, I guess you can say, avenues: Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, the rest of them. So they're not there maybe right when this episode airs on YouTube, but they will be there shortly after, probably within a day or so. But yeah, so essentially speaking, just to kind of wrap up that sort of introduction, is we've been doing this for a while. We have a passion for it. At the same time, we're regular people, just like, you guys. So having said that, your feedback and your comments are greatly appreciated and encouraged. So if you're on YouTube, leave your comments below. Let us know. Even sometimes you might have some ideas. And, if something you're saying is very, very important, or maybe it's a big thing that we should be discussing, we'll give you a shout out. And obviously, we'll bring your topic up. Your feedback is very important. You guys can follow us on Twitter. Mine is Patwant Singh. And you guys want to share your Twitter handles?
Yeah.
Mine's just Simran Kharal, SIMRAN KHARAL. You can also pick up on Instagram at Leon the Professional with 2 F's and 2 S's. I know it's spelled wrong. Leave me alone. And if you like some of my woodworking stuff, Horn and Feather Design Works.
Shout out.
Yippers.
And
then my Twitter is at Chota Sher, so CHHOTASHER, and you can find me on Instagram at prof _bent PENT. And yeah, there's lots of nonsense on there. Twitter is very random for me, or has been. I'm not too active nowadays, but yeah, I'll put a occasional snarky comment about the Oilers.
Yeah.
My favorite is "Here come the Oilers" when they're shitting the bed.
Did the Oilers win or lose?
Oh yeah, that's my favorite account, I think, on Twitter.
So with our Twitters and all our social media handles, we'll have those in the description below. You guys can click on us, follow us if you want, but definitely give us your feedback in the comments for sure. We'd love to hear back from you guys. All that information is in the description below. Let's start today's show. We have a very, very interesting sort of 3 points today to talk about. And the 3 different topics we're going to be discussing today is, number 1, the NHL trade deadline, which just happened. It's today's Vaisakhi. So we'll talk about Vaisakhi in a second. Happy Vaisakhi to everybody.
Happy Vaisakhi.
It's also Ramadan, so happy Ramadan, and happy Navratri to those who are celebrating that. So it's a cool day because it's like a trio. So it's like 3 major religions in the world.
Get them all.
They're all sort of having a special day today / yesterday, whichever way you want to say it. But today is Wednesday, April 14th. Or yesterday, April 13th, whichever way you want to look at it based on the calendars around the world. So happy Vaisakhi to everybody. Shout out to everybody about that. So we'll talk about trade deadline in the NHL, which was it yesterday or day before?
It was Monday.
It was Monday, so the 12th.
Yeah, Monday the 12th, yeah.
And so we're 2 days later doing our show, and we'll talk about this. And also we're going to be talking about our second topic later on, which is Punjabi music generally right now, our takes and opinions on the situation. And then we'll do a third topic, sort of like a smaller, kind of more open-ended topic, which is sort of the general sporting world right now. So what's going on? What are you looking forward to, etc. And then also, I just wanted to say shout out to the Kisan movement, which is still happening in Delhi right now, with all the farmers from not just Punjab, but around different states in India. And so farmers protest, hashtag farmers protest. And you guys can check that out on social media, as well as we're living in a COVID world. So just thinking about the COVID world, and I guess it's entering stage 3 of COVID, or whatever you want to, the third wave they call it. Having said that, and focusing on trade deadline in the NHL, because it's a COVID season. And just to kind of start off with that, trades are very interesting this year, or signings, because any players coming into any team are still going to have to go under the general government requirements of quarantining for about 2 weeks. So
well, actually, the Canadian
Changed
government
it.
has lowered that down to
Yeah.
7 days.
is it 7 days now? Okay.
Yeah. So, but
Yeah.
well, you can circumvent that if you're trading within Canada.
Yes,
So let's
true.
say that we make a trade with Ottawa or something like that.
Yeah.
They like we don't have to that player doesn't have to quarantine.
Yeah, I'm a little bit focused on the Oilers acquisition in the trade deadline, which was
Yeah,
not from
sure.
Canada. So I'm thinking with that perspective, of course. But yeah, definitely good points to bring up. So, you know, the trade deadline, just trades in general this season in the NHL have been very interesting. And I guess
Lots of three-way trades this
a lot of three-way
season
trades.
too, and a lot of just interesting, just getting around cap. Like, yeah, this is baseball style trading. Like, you haven't really seen it too much before. Like, oh, we'll retain the salary and all this kind of stuff. So it's like
We'll
a lot
do
of
this, you do
different
this.
things are happening.
Yeah, give and take.
Not from our boy Kenny Holland though. He
Yeah.
he doesn't even consider that sort of stuff.
You know, having said
Yeah.
that though, just one thing I was going to say, like with the trade deadline this season, the thing is, like, it's very interesting because you can't make, and a lot of GMs didn't make, I guess you can say, right away impactful trades. And that's something to consider. Cap space, obviously, and then COVID sort of global situation happening. So, you know, we'll start with sort of your general opinions on the trade deadline. Maybe some winners, some losers, anything that sort of nothing of like, where there's no official format to it, but I'll let you guys take turns and we'll just jump into our banter. We'll go with Simran first. Like, who do you think, let's focus on the Oilers actually. So who do you think our new defenseman, well, not who, like, how do you think our new defenseman is going to potentially improve our team or fill in a gap in our team?
Well, okay, so yeah, so if for those of us that don't know, we acquired Dmitry Kulikov from some place. I don't
Devils.
remember where now? Yeah, thank you. It's the Devils,
Yeah.
which is an odd team. They usually have like a weird defenseman bump. It's like any defenseman that comes from the Devils, when he goes to another team, he usually falls on his face. We remember this with Mark Fane. A couple other teams have acquired guys from the Devils and they end up falling on their face. But Dmitry Kulikov's interesting. He's played with other teams before. He's came into the league as a fairly high draft pick. He's a first rounder, and he had a little bit of offensive talent playing with Florida. And I believe he got traded from Buffalo to Florida. And so he escaped Buffalo, played in Florida for a bit, went to Winnipeg.
No, it's the other way around. He was in Florida the whole time, then Buffalo for just like a short season.
And
stint.
then he went to
Winnipeg. Yeah.
Yeah, he was in Winnipeg before Boston, right?
He was never in Boston.
He was never in Boston.
Before New Jersey, he was in Winnipeg.
Oh, New Jersey, that's what I meant. Sorry.
Like 3 seasons he was in
I was
Winnipeg.
thinking of
Yeah,
all.
and then he signed with New Jersey.
Yeah.
So the interesting thing about him is that he came into the league being like an offensive defenseman. He plays lefty, and he's not too big. He's about 6 feet. He's not too heavy. He can skate okay. He can pass okay, but his main talent is as a shutdown D. I think you can really compare him to an Adam Larson. This year was a very interesting year. He had a couple of down years, and then he had a pretty good year as far as advanced stats go in New Jersey as far as a defensive center. He played a lot with Damon Severson and also PK Subban. And with both of those players, they actually played better with him than without him, which is really, really interesting. That being said, he played the most penalty killing minutes out of like any defenseman on New Jersey over his tenure in New Jersey. So he's been like,
they've leaned on him then.
Yeah, they've leaned on him quite a bit in a very significant shutdown role. And the kind of opposition he's got, like he's played against other teams' top lines consistently for like the last couple of years. So he's been a real like heavy minutes shutdown guy. To get him for what we got him for, which is a fourth turning into a conditional third, a conditional third next year, depending on whether or not the Oilers win a round with him. Will be interesting to see if we end up paying that conditional third. I think that's a reasonable deal. And it addresses a certain area of need. I can see how Dave Tippett was very reticent to put his faith in Caleb Jones, while at the same time having Chris Russell out there to play a serious number of minutes. I don't always like Dave Tippett's approach to how he's handling his defensemen, especially when it comes to Caleb Jones and William Lagesson. That being said, I think adding another guy like Dmitry Kulikov is a net bonus for us, especially if that means Chris Russell either plays less or doesn't play at all. So if bringing in Dmitry Kulikov means you're not playing Russell, you're playing Dmitry Kulikov in that position, and you're giving Jones a little bit more of a push to do what he wants. If Kulikov can play the heavy minutes, and then you give Jones the soft minutes on that left side, that's an awesome thing. If this means that Chris Russell stays in the lineup and you bring in Dmitry Kulikov, so we basically have like one left-handed puck-moving defenseman on the team, this is a huge problem.
And that's the thing I worry about because of Tippett's kind of, his like leaning towards the vets or whatever, that old school kind of a little bit of mentality with the coach,
a deference. Right? He has a deference to the vets. And it's been mentioned on other podcasts, like Dennis King on Sunil Agnihotri's Superfan podcast said it very, very eloquently. Basically, I think Tippett is planning on having a game where you're going to get 2 goals from the Connor McDavid line. And the rest of the team is probably going to give up 2 goals, and you're hoping that a power play pulls us ahead 3-2, and we win 3-2 games or 2-1 games.
That sounds like a nightmare.
And that's fine for the regular season, but the whistles get put away in the playoffs.
Yeah.
And
even in the regular season, that's
even in the regular season, we know what this league is about. We know how this league operates as far as we've seen the Tim Peel incident now. I'm sure as those weeks ago. The league does not care about teams actually doing well. They care about keeping games close, and that's a mandate from the owners around the league.
Exciting games.
Yeah, you want to play exciting games, close games. You want to have as many teams as possible within a few points of the playoffs, even if there's almost a mathematically impossible chance of them making the playoffs.
Yeah.
So it's this false parity that is being permitted in a league, which we don't tolerate in any other in any other sports format. I mean, there's blowouts in every other game, and goal scoring is exciting to watch. So it's a paradox the league is in, where they're trying to get more goal scoring by reducing the number of reducing the size of pads and stuff, but at the same time they won't deal with this officiating problem. And it's not the referee's fault. It's literally a mandate from the league, from Colin Campbell and the ownership. But I digress. Like you need to adapt to the style of a changing league. Part of that means that you need to acknowledge that you're not going to get the calls. Like Connor McDavid isn't going to get the calls. Leon Draisaitl is not going to get the calls, especially into the playoffs. And teams need to be faster and they need to be dominant 5-on-5. It's not enough to be one line and a bunch of scrubs and hoping that you're going to get through on special teams. You need to be, you know, at not 4 lines, 5 lines deep throughout your lineup in order to not only survive the playoffs but thrive in them and move on.
That's why in soccer they have the subs, right? Like you have your first team that comes out or your starting lineup, and then you have, you know, the substitute players that come out that are, you know, it's like the 5th line, so to speak. Or
great teams will have like these guys are on the bench, you're a starter on another team, right? In soccer, right? So
and that's why this deadline has been really interesting to me for the Edmonton Oilers. Ken Holland said that, you know, he wasn't trying to bet the farm this year. He wasn't trying to you know, waste futures and waste picks.
When we knew that too, based on his moves in the off season as well.
In the off season as well, and I'm just like, that's okay, sure. And you come in, you bring in some guys. You want to see how people do. You want to see that you have some expiring contracts here and there. But what's interesting to me is that you don't do anything with your expiring contracts. So if you don't think that you're a team that can excel in the playoffs, that can win a few rounds and go deep, right? You refuse to make those kinds of acquisitions to bolster your team. Fair. You don't think we have it. Okay, that's cool. And based on the way this team is playing, that makes a lot of sense. That's an astute observation, right? Then what are you doing with your unrestricted free agents right now? Why are you hanging on to Larson? Why are you hanging on to Barry? Why are you hanging on to Mike Smith?
Yeah, you got to try to utilize them and make something like this. If they walk away, then what was the point? That value is hot now, which is scary because, like, what if he's willing to pay for Barry for this season? Which is like, at the end of the day, like, Barry offensively great, right? But we all know there's a lot of shortcomings there too defensively. Especially defensively, of course, right?
But offensively as well. He's actually quite a drag at 5-on-5. And
well, I mean, he's a benefactor of the power play.
Yeah. Like, let's not pretend that Barry is the
backing.
That Barry is the straw that stirs this drink.
Yeah.
Barry's gonna get those goals. No, like I should rephrase. Someone is gonna get those goals.
Right.
It doesn't need to be Barry.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? By aggregate,
we have some solid prospects that could fit that role too, right?
Yeah. And then, so fine. You don't want to trade those bigger pieces. Let's say it presents a weird narrative to your leadership group on this team. It's mixed messaging. You're trying to convince Connor McDavid and them that, hey, we're trying to build a competitive team. We want to win here. You're not going to be sellers, right? Especially when you're sitting in a playoff position. Fine. Okay. What are you doing to weaponize and move out your bad contracts? Because if you want to come into this off season with space and you want to trim the fat and you want to be really good next year, as you said, you want to be power players in the off season market. Why have you not moved a guy like Alex Chason, who has a lot of cachet in the league as a veteran player who would potentially help a team going in the playoffs? Why have you not tried to get rid of Zach Cassian's boat anchor of a contract? Why have you not, dealt with the looming impossibility of James Neal being a good player again in the NHL?
And then, I mean, there's also Nuge.
Yeah, and then there's also Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, whose last contract offer was apparently an insult to him.
Yeah.
I mean, that can be a lot of,
Ennis, right? Like, Ennis still has value.
Yeah, and Ennis still has value. And here's the thing: you're gonna put Tyler Ennis on the taxi squad for a guy like Drew Shore when you're literally thirsting for wingers right now. Like Tyler Ennis' ceiling, I mean, despite not his ceiling, but his ability is so much higher than a guy like Drew Shore. And the lineup decisions are really puzzling to me right now. And going into the trade deadline, after the trade deadline, the comments made were an even bigger head scratcher for me. The biggest one for me was Evan Bouchard. Like if you got 20 games left in the season, or whatever it is, it's like 18 or 20 games. You're telling me that Evan Bouchard is going to sit for the rest of the season and he hasn't played in like a month? Why is he up?
Yeah,
He's
it's
a
just
first-round pick, and the majority of the players that were drafted ahead of him, and a few of them that were drafted behind him, are in the NHL right now, playing meaningful minutes for their teams.
Yeah, we've
Right?
seen this story before with
We've seen this
Oilers
story before.
and like the development of their prospects, right? So like for us, it's like, oh my god, please don't do this to this
What are
kid
you
who
doing?
has a lot of upside. He looks like he can be a great player in the league, and so this kind of stuff is what stunts the growth, of course. So we obviously with Tippett, we know like where his head is at with the younger defenseman.
He doesn't exactly trust him, but like,
Yeah,
and that's fine. Okay, like young defenseman prone to mistakes. Tyson Barrie, or what Evan Bouchard brings is already better than what Tyson Barrie brings. Are you telling me that this kid is not good enough to hold a vet that might need a break, like on a back-to-back, out of the lineup? You're telling me that this is the lineup you want to go with, like through and through for the entire season in a condensed schedule, right? Playing the kind of minutes you, especially late in the season. Like, what are you thinking? Like, all right, now, are you going to tell me that playing Chris Russell on his offside in the playoffs is going to be, for 14 minutes a night, is going to be better than than Evan Bouchard getting those minutes? And at least if you're not planning on going deep in the playoffs, right, then that kid learning on the fly, getting some valuable playoff experience.
Yeah, so like it's exactly like you said, like it's unclear as to the stuff that Tippett's doing, like why is he doing some of these things, but like you see the benefit from also putting some of the players into the fire. Like you see Darnell Nurse like arguably take a good step forward this year, right? Like he's getting some crazy minutes. Playing top tiered players now, right? So his game has stepped up in terms of time, who he's facing, quality of players, right? And then we can obviously nitpick on like his play and where his downfalls are, but at the end of the day, he's been an improvement so much, right? But that's also because like he's had the trust, and like we've seen some really weak points in Nurse's game. But like whereas like when we're referencing Bouchard here, like and not just him, like some other younger defensemen, like those opportunities are not coming to them right now because of whatever the favoritism is. Not favoritism, but whatever, I guess the barriers in Tippett's like coaching style are, like he not believing in these guys. But it's a little weird because like so I don't know, like maybe they have to do something different to build that trust. And like how Nurse was already kind of getting pushed into that role when Tippett came in. Like he was like relatively like halfway there maybe. So like I don't know, like some of these guys weren't in that same situation, obviously, right?
So like even for the viewers and listeners, like if you guys have your opinions on this, leave them in the comments below and let us know what you think. So yeah, we're talking about the trade deadline, and the NHL's trade deadline has been very interesting this COVID year. We talked a little about the Edmonton Oilers. So with our latest acquisition, guys, I forgot the player's name. What was his name again?
Dmitry Kulikov.
That's the one.
Yes, sir.
So, do you think that it was a good acquisition for the Oilers? Yes or no, and then why? And then we'll go into some of the other trades.
Yeah, I'll say yeah, because like with Kulikov, like Simran talked about it already, like in terms of his offensive ability, it's not really there anymore. But like he's a solid shutdown guy, and like in terms of what we have, like
and that's what I was gonna say. Like
he can be an
offense from our defense right now.
You can always use offense from your.
I mean, it doesn't hurt, but like
somebody who can move a puck and stuff like that. You know what I mean? Because like if you just gotta go back into like thinking about like whose spot is he taking, right? So, and then that was like kind of what we were discussing.
Good
Like, is he
point.
taking one of the young guy spots, or is he taking like Chris Russell
Yeah.
and reducing his workload? Because if it's you're taking the one young guy spot, you're taking guys who can move the puck also, like those. Because our young guys they're a bit of a more puck movers than what we have in terms of like a Chris Russell or other veterans like Larson,
Well,
right?
just Jones really. Lagesson hasn't showed that ability.
Yeah, not like
Slater Cuckoo is like
Yeah.
a possession suck. He's a black hole. And
Yeah,
Chris Russell.
yeah,
is-
not all of them, but like, well, yeah.
So you think
anyways.
it's a good acquisition for the team?
Yeah, in a
Overall,
vacuum.
yeah.
Very like good acquisition.
Okay.
Like, the value he paid for him is within that range. The minutes this guy plays or has played, and the numbers he's put up, very reasonable. It's
Yeah,
a good,
especially
it's a
for the
good
team
get.
he plays on too. Like he has solid numbers,
And by all the metrics, he's
Yeah.
been more than a adequate NHL defenseman.
See, and in my opinion, the Oilers, we have two of the arguably greatest players in the NHL currently, and more with our depth. You can argue in the top 10. There's a few other players. Mainly, I'm referring to Nuge here, but I mean, Nurse this season is in that category. Whether your opinion aligns
lots
with
of
that
players
or
are playing really well. Like Barry
Yep.
is getting production, Nurse
Barry's,
is getting
yeah, he's
production,
doing
Mike
stuff.
Smith is having an incredible season.
So my point being
yeah.
is with Kulikov, do you think, in my opinion, I think he's good to have because he solidifies the defensive side of the defense and will sort of, I guess you can say he's like many teams have leaned on him to be sort of the shutdown guy. He might be able to give us that. Maybe, I don't know. What do you?
Look, he's an NHL player when on a team that doesn't have enough NHL players.
Fair
Yeah.
point.
That's what this is.
Yeah,
that's, what this
that's a
Okay.
good analogy.
He's an
And
NHL player. Yeah,
that's why
this team
for our
doesn't
old
have-
listeners that listen on Pardesi Beats Powerplay when we're on the radio, I've been advocating for a very solid NHL player for a long time. Unfortunately, him and his beard went to Toronto, and you guys know I'm referring to Joel Thornton, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I was saying it from day one. This guy needs to be on the Oilers, and
It would be
everybody's like,
really
he's
cool.
old, he's old. Well, look what he's doing in Toronto, right?
To be
Yeah.
fair, his minutes in Toronto, and I've been watching it closely, is that he was effective on the first line for the first little bit of the season. He got hurt, came back.
Yeah.
He hasn't really been as effective. I think that's a guy whose minutes probably need to be managed a little bit, and whose line mates also need to be managed.
But
Yeah.
the point is that
At this point in his career, he's probably not like an NHL regular, but
it
he's still an
necessarily
NHL
doesn't
player.
mean that him on the ice will be making an impact, but the
Yeah.
wisdom that comes with him, the in locker room veteran
Yeah.
leadership that comes with a guy like that, especially for potentially and hopefully, obviously speaking from the past, hoping that he would come to Edmonton and bring that. He's doing that in Toronto
Yeah.
now.
Well, like if
That
we're gonna,
Toronto locker room, is like good vibes only right now.
And that's the thing.
There's such a
It's a really
man,
And that's the
infectious.
thing.
it's crazy.
Yeah.
So
but
moving on,
like
guys-
since we're talking about deadline, right?
Yeah,
like
yeah.
if for Oilers, if we want to focus on them for just 2 seconds, like the
Sure.
guy that they could have like looked at was Getzlaff, right? And then there was a little
Very
bit of
easily.
interest, for some. I don't remember who else was looking at him, but anyways, like that was maybe the player. But there wasn't really. I don't think there was any players like that. Well, maybe Foligno, Eric Stahl, kind of, but. At the same time, like, okay, so now let's look at other teams, right? Because like what we did, not bad move, but I think some other teams did some way better moves.
Before we
that are
talk about the
playing
other
in
teams,
our
let-
conference, or
let's
division
talk
too,
about
right?
just the one other Edmonton sort of, I guess you can say Edmonton related player that was a big guy in the trade deadline this year, Taylor Hall. So I'll let you
Oh,
guys
right.
touch on Taylor Hall and what do you think of that move, and then we can talk about things that I guess stood out to you.
So again, like for me, the Taylor Hall trade, he goes to Boston
Yeah.
for a second round pick and along with Curtis Lazar. For a second round pick and Anders Bjork. Curtis Lazar has more goals than Taylor Hall and Anders Bjork put together this year. He has 5 goals. And then
He's not having the greatest season that way.
I mean,
All
like
this is-
Taylor
yeah.
Hall.
Taylor
Yeah.
Hall's not having a great season. That being said, they're like Foligno got a first round pick. Sam Bennett out of Calgary was
Second,
traded
right?
to
Yeah,
Where did he go? Tampa or Florida? Yeah, he went to Florida, and he got traded for 2 seconds.
Yeah.
Like the value associated with cap space was wild this year. So you didn't see a lot of
wasn't it
players.
just 1 second for Sam? Anyways,
I might be wrong.
I think
maybe
it was
second.
first a second, and what player? Heineman.
Yeah, who's I think is basically 2 seconds, I guess.
Yeah.
That they traded for, and then you're basically looking at like I said, the value associated with cap space this year was very, very interesting. You saw a lot of 3-team deals and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Like
Taylor Hall,
Khushwant alluded to earlier, it was kind of like baseball style trading and things like that this season.
And what's interesting is that Taylor Hall's had a really bad season. I think there was a lot of rumors around how he wanted to go to Boston earlier in the year. You really need to look at that with like fresh eyes. For Kevin Adams, the goalie or the general manager in Buffalo, I think his hands were tied as soon as he gave Taylor Hall a no move clause, and only allowed him to pick, or that only allowed him to really talk to the few teams that Taylor Hall was willing to go to. And I think that Buffalo was the one that really he wanted to check out, and he used that to his advantage. Or at Buffalo or Boston used that to their advantage, and they got Taylor Hall for a steal.
Yeah, that is a ridiculous trade, right? In terms of value.
Yeah,
obviously, he's a Hart Trophy winner, right? So.
Yeah, say what you want about the guy, or like however, like I don't believe that he's finished at age 30.
At this point, Taylor Hall, as much as we won't see it from our Edmonton perspective, that him being, brought into our team as his first NHL team, but why wouldn't we use the term? He's a veteran in the NHL.
Yeah, 100%. He's a veteran in the NHL.
He's a veteran player who's experienced many different coaches, some of which he worked really, really well under, some of which, he was okay. But at the same time, like you said, he's won awards in the NHL. He's been, even in Edmonton, in the top 2, 3, 4 in the scoring leaders run. He's been up there, even with Eberle in one season. They were both up in the top 5. And
he won 2 Memorial Cups.
Exactly.
In the CHL.
And those youth, their youth sort of, when they started out, their Team Canada, their Memorial Cups, their sort of younger day accolades are still a part of the player. And the thing is, when a player gets bounced around, right, you'll find many different players who, with the right coach, the manager is going to bring the player in regardless, but the coach is the one that will understand that, okay, I can use this guy to do these things, and some of them are off ice. And I think Taylor Hall's name in itself, on a team like Boston, is just what the Oilers sort of wanted, not in the sense of Taylor Hall, but in the sense of depth. And he adds that depth to a team like Boston, who already has some pretty solid players. It's not a harmful thing to throw Taylor Hall into the mix.
Yeah, when you look at it from an Oilers perspective, you really look at, okay, we have a top line that works. It scores goals. Like between Puljujarvi, McDavid, and Draisaitl, you got 2 guys that can play center.
Yeah.
And 2 guys that are basically rotate through wing.
Yeah.
And that's a good line. And then you look at the rest of the team. And aside from Jujhar line like spontaneously popping off for goals lately, our second line, they'll take it. Our second line is a dead zone for goals. And not even just for goals. It's not like they're getting shots, they're getting the opportunities, and it's not going in. They aren't even getting the opportunities. And then you look down the rest of the lineup, that fourth line is absolute trash. Basically, any line with Zach Kassian has been trash. And you're going through and you realize this team, more than anything, more than Dmitry Kulikov, this team needed a second line left wing, that's not a complementary player that pushes the river. And what I mean by that is that his possession metrics, like make any line that he's playing on a dominant line, over 50% possession. Like they control play in the offensive zone when they're out there.
So
That's
I think
what this
that's
team
sort
needs.
of the mindset. Like I think the management and the coaches know that we need that. It doesn't matter who the player is that can do that. And I think bringing our new defenseman in was a little bit of hopes of at least retaining possession and deflecting opposition offense. So having said that, is there any other sort of, because for the sake of time and for the sake of moving forward with our topics, is there anything else that sort of stuck out as sort of like this was cool about trade deadline?
Oh yeah.
We'll go with
I liked
Khushwant and then Simran.
I liked that deal for Boston because like Taylor Hall like he has the 1-year deal, so he can go somewhere else next season.
Yeah.
So they don't give up much for a push at the playoffs because like their window is closing.
Yep.
With like Bergeron and even Marchand. Pasternak's a little younger, like so they can try to do a little rebuild with him. But like even with the Oilers, like you won't see much until off season probably, just because cap space was such a huge limiting factor. Holland made that clear in his off season. This past off season, his moves, they were all very relatively safe and very just like economical in a sense. Just nothing crazy, right? And then same with the deadline. So we know kind of like where his maybe head is, and if this offseason he doesn't deliver, then we ride kind of thing. But like overall, like I really liked Toronto's. Like for me, like because since we're playing in the Canadian division, right, the North Division, like Toronto makes some more moves. They get Foligno. Who else did they get? They got another guy too, I think. Or maybe it was just Foligno.
They got a goalie. They got David Rittich.
Oh right, they got Riddick too, right? Like so.
Rittich, yeah.
There's a little bit more of a because like I don't know if Anderson's coming back or whatever it is.
It's interesting. He's had a bad and injury riddled season, and he's been good for that team for a long time. It's just that he's like what's interesting about Toronto to me is that like their management recognized that hey, our goalies and our team, like what our team is good at and what our team is bad at.
Yeah,
they recognize. I think Foligno is maybe a little bit of an overcompensation. He's not a great possession metric player, but I guess if he's playing limited minutes in the playoffs, he's going to be an asset.
He's definitely not as impactful as he once was.
No, but with Rittich, I think he's an average goalie. But the big thing is with that is you don't need crazy stellar goaltending. You just need a guy that's league average to get you through a lot of the games sometimes, especially as a backup. You just need a steady.
Yeah, that's it, right?
But they recognize that, hey, Jack Campbell at whatever, he's like 32 years old. This is not the Jack Campbell that you're going to get for the next 10 years. This guy is on a heat. He's literally
tearing it up, but
and just like Mike Smith.
Yeah, exactly.
This guy's on a heater, and when it comes down, because it will come down, but when it comes down, okay, we need to be prepared for it.
Yeah.
The Oilers didn't do anything to shore up their goaltending. But the Leafs, I think they're at this point they're 5 goalies deep.
Yeah, and they got Ben Hutton.
Like 3 goalies. Yeah,
Ben Hutton as well, right? So it's just another here, let's just throw a little bit more security.
I bet you Cujo will be willing to jump into if he had to.
Yeah, lace him up. Where's Felix Potvin right now?
Yeah.
The guy the trade that I wanted to bring up was Anthony Mantha for Jacob Vrana, which was really, really interesting to me. It was the only
it's a big one in terms of both guys giving up some who they think is really important, right?
Huge, yeah. It's a player for player trade. Like it's a hockey trade. It's not like player for picks or whatever like that. This is a move to get both teams put both teams in a better position. I think Detroit saw that they're probably not going to be good during the tenure of Mantha's career. And it was a huge shock to me, just the fact that I found out that Anthony Mantha is 30 years old.
Yeah.
Like that, I feel so old hearing that. So it's wild. But yeah, Anthony Mantha is 30 years old. And during his entire tenure, he's been with Detroit.
No, he's 26.
They've been a terrible team. Oh, he's 26?
Yeah, I was like, that's
Oh, sorry.
way too old.
So when Detroit plans to be good, he'll be in his 30s. I think that's.
Okay.
Yeah, I
When
think
they're
that's.
trying to contend, right? Yeah.
Sorry,
with all these
yeah.
picks and stuff
Well,
they're
that,
getting.
yeah, that makes me feel a lot better. But Jacob Vrana is a really, really interesting player in that he's a very dominant possession player, equal to or better than Anthony Mantha, playing on a really good team, but he has an even better shot that he doesn't use very often. And I think he was butting heads with the coach at this point. Washington's coach is an interesting guy, Peter Laviolette. He's bounced around the league. He kind of is a bit of a motivator. Not all of his teams perform very well in statistical categories. He tends to get by with the raw stuff. I think Washington's a very different team under Laviolette than they were when they won the cup with Barry Trotz. Barry Trotz is a hell of a coach. You can see what he's done with the Islanders, turned them into a legitimate threat in the East. And Pete Laviolette isn't that good of a coach in my opinion, but his dealing with Vrana tells me as much. I think stylistically Mantha probably fits their team a lot better than Vrana does, and I think that Vrana can actually grow with Detroit better than he has with Washington. With Washington, the margin for a young player and his errors is very limited because they're a team that's in win now mode. So every mistake a kid like that makes is a very critical error, right?
Yeah.
And which is crazy because they're like second in the league right now.
Yeah. They're
comparatively
first in their div.
Mantha's a guy that's going to come in. He's pretty intense.
So
as far as
having said that, for you guys, so go ahead, Khushwant, real quick with what you were going to finish.
Oh yeah, I was just gonna say I like it's a win-win for both, right?
Yeah.
Washington gets a bigger guy, similar skill, hopefully similar output.
I think those were
he
the
already
ones
had a good first
for the
game
trade
with
deadline.
him. He popped a goal, got an assist, right?
But
And
whatever
has
you
a little
do,
bit more upside, right, for Detroit, hopefully.
whatever you do, do not if Steve Yzerman comes calling, do not answer the phone.
You're gonna get fleeced
he's
such a magician.
He got Jacob Vrana, okay, and then he got plus.
Yeah, the picks.
Plus. The picks. He got a first, a second.
Yeah.
He got another player in that deal.
We all know Steve Yzerman, what he did in Tampa Bay, let
he's
alone
a wily
what he did as a
dude.
player.
Yeah. And then
dude,
he is a hockey monster.
He fleeced Ken Holland for 2 picks for Andreas
Athanasiou, yeah.
and Ken Holland still has PTSD from that deal.
Stevie Y, man, one of the ultimate legends in the game, and still doing his
we
thing.
saw what he did with Tampa, and then now we're gonna see what he does with Detroit. But
I'm happy to see him back in the Detroit organization. That's one of the teams I like as well.
I wish he was our GM.
In my opinion, guys, I think Montreal did some good moves this season as well. I mean, they picked up Stahl, Gustafsson, and I think Merrill as well. So just Stahl and Gustafsson too, I think are good picks for Montreal. And that was
burned us in the overtime game that we had with Montreal just recently. Yep. But anyways,
Montreal's going to be, in our North Division. I think they have been, and I think they will be, one of the top high flyers, you can say. But having said that, the NHL trade deadline this season generally was one of the most boringest trade deadlines in the last, I think it was decade, I heard somewhere, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, it's wild.
And I think that could because of the cap space and COVID, but
COVID and cap space
GMs are increasingly GMs are also increasingly risk averse, and not enough of them
with the cap space
knowledge regarding the cap. They're
some of their hands are tied. You can't even.
Some of them, guys,
not all of them. Some of them you can't blame.
Most of these guys wouldn't be qualified to manage a McDonald's. Outside, they're given the keys to a hockey team. Literally, they left school. They left home at 15 years old. They've literally had no formal education. And I'm going to
leave this topic with your thought, but I'm going to give a little flair to it. So if Is it just it's gonna be maybe a heated thing with a little bit of comments to it. But okay, Simran and Khushwant, both of you pick one team in the NHL that would be the ultimate McDonald's team right now, which means the whole team's working on McDonald's based off of the manager, and then I guess you can say the players.
Wait, hang on. Does this mean that they're only capable of working at a McDonald's, or
I'll let you decide and you
be like
explain.
the best run, like most beautiful chicken nuggets ever?
I just want those beef patties to be nice and juicy and served up quick. And
you shouldn't.
So this is like we're talking about good quality.
You guys decide. You can take the worst team in the NHL. Who do you think? Which team would be the best to run a McDonald's?
Best. I can tell you about like some of the worst ones, which is probably Arizona.
Just pick a team that you want to run McDonald's, but that also means you don't want them in the NHL. Think about that.
Arizona. Okay. Oh, like they're too good to be?
No, like Simran said.
I'm just gonna say what I think is the worst
organization,
probably, which is Arizona.
Yeah. I would agree with that assessment. My only caveat to that would be Buffalo.
Okay.
They don't even have a scouting staff. Like they fired literally.
They were also. I was like, it's either Buffalo or them.
I mean, out of the two of your guys' picks, Buffalo has the most influential food flavoring, so maybe they'll have some sort of.
And they've been relevant in the not recent past, but they have been relevant before. Whereas Arizona, it's hard for them to. It's been a while. I know they had that one little run, but that's like it.
That was a weird little
exactly. It was a Mike
Smith analogy on it, but
it made
shout out to McDonald's if you guys want to change this can to a McDonald's coffee cup and sponsor us. Let us know. Other than that, boys, I mean that was a interesting trade deadline.
McDonald's, you guys can give me Happy Meals.
Anytime you guys see it, if you guys work at McDonald's and you're allowed to, and you see this guy in the drive-through, Happy Meal him up. All right, boys. Yes. Good talk for NHL trade deadline. A little bit lackluster this season, but a few points that we could discuss.
Yeah, good little rants for us.
I think let's move over to another topic. I don't know if we're going to have time for any more after this today, but just sort of the current state of the Punjabi music industry. Listening to music. I'll be real with you guys. I mean, so what happened with our show being on radio is we transitioned to not being with them. There was an ownership change and everything. I'm not going to go into the details, but anyways, we decided to go independent as a Pardesi Beats team. Since that change, I was like, I haven't bought any new music in the last 2-3 weeks. And I've kind of been focused on, other things and obviously setting up this podcast, but I went on a spree a couple of nights ago, 2-3 nights ago, maybe for about 2-3 nights. I just went and scoured the music that has come out, listened to it, bought a few albums. Albums is what I'm saying correctly. So having said that, I've sort of refreshed myself with what's new, maybe a day behind in terms of what's new. But at the same time, what are you guys liking right now in the Punjabi music industry? There's a lot of, once again, shout out to the Kisan movement. There's a lot of songs that are going out and dedicated to the Kisan movement, bringing awareness to it in different facets. But aside from the Kisan movement, what are you guys sort of vibing with in the Punjabi music industry at the moment?
Well, I feel my beat is not on the pulse here. Like in terms of like the industry and the music, like I don't think like I offer much, which is why I figured I'd go first, because like, okay, so this is maybe like a deeper thing, but so like you just said, like you made all that time to like catch up, right? But I haven't really felt like I've been so kind of not interested for a while. Maybe it's just because of like, there was a lot of like Musayala style, Shariman style, like it's good, it's entertaining, but it's not like I'm not really super into that, right? And then so like I just haven't really wanted to like listen. So that's like kind of my state, right? It's like I'm not too interested. And also like with music especially, like it's actually such a commitment to kind of stay up to date and see what's happening and follow the trends, whatever it is. Like this is just a random comment, but like I have a hard time just staying relevant nowadays, or even listening to new music. Like I don't even know where to go anymore. Like I have Spotify, but like I'm not even sure.
I
But-
think that's the thing. There's a lot of these days
Yeah.
with when the music industry went to the sort of streaming platform, there you can get playlists. Like I know I have a playlist on Apple
Yeah.
Music which is just called New Music Mix, and Apple sort of watches my activity and what I listen to, and they sort of pick new music that's released based on similar or those same artists. And I think with Spotify, I think Spotify does that a smidge better.
They have playlists, right? But like when I listen to like the people, like it's usually users playlists.
Based, yeah.
But like when I listen to these playlists, I just honestly, the music just sounds like trash to me.
And
It's just weird to say, but like it's just some things are good, but it's just.
Is it fair to say, in your opinion, then, that you don't think the Punjabi music industry is anything that you're excited to listen to at the moment, or?
Yeah, for sure. That's essentially what I'm saying. But like I haven't like with the movement, Kisan movement, like you're referencing. Yeah, I know there's a lot of more meaningful songs put out, but like I haven't really been. My ears have not been really like hearing those songs either.
Okay.
Right, and that's kind of different too. Like it depends. Like you have to be in a certain mood when you want to listen to like social change music. Like if we can use that as a term.
Yeah.
And the other thing is it's a
release.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead, Simran. I was just going to say real quick. The other thing is it's a COVID year, or you can say a little more than a year now, and that does affect sort of artist collaboration, getting in a studio and stuff. It doesn't really, but it does. So
I mean,
everything's so virtual. You should be able to figure it out. But anyways,
yeah, for me, like the big, I think the trend right now is leaning towards, like I haven't really been paying too much about towards the like Kasani music too much. There's a place for that. I get it, but like when I'm chilling in my car or whatever, like, sometimes you need that separation from what's going on in the world. And
that stuff's heavy.
Yeah, exactly. And I need that mental break. I need to turn off sometimes. That being said, I'm working in the shop, or I'm out running errands or whatever, and I have my SoundCloud going on like the algorithm, just giving me stuff. And dude, there's so much. I guess it's being defined as like trap music, Punjabi like trap music.
Okay.
And I'm gonna sound like an old head here, but so this is a preface. I'm about to talk some shit.
Naturally.
It's so bad. It's so bad. You have young kids talking so much shit about stuff they have no idea about. Literally, they're making music videos in their parents' cars, in their suburban neighborhoods.
That sounds like my nephew who just started rapping.
There you go.
Yeah, my brother knows what I'm talking about. Like, it's entertaining, but
it's like you're telling me about what kind of life you live and how hard it is, and like, I carry this kind of gun and we do this and we do that.
Yeah.
It's like this, like it's like this weird amalgam of all like the toxic tropes of rap music from 25 years ago.
That's the shit that puts me off. That's why I don't want to.
Then they mix it with all the negative and toxic traits from the Punjabi culture.
Yeah, exactly. So you bring in all that
nonsense. Caste system, like, obviously, right?
Well, more than that,
alcoholism. Your wife, like ignoring your kids. All of the, like, whatever. Okay, that's fine. Okay, sure. And then you want to wrap it up in this shroud of immense privilege. You know what I mean? It's one thing to sort of co-opt the struggles of other kinds of ethnic communities, right, in North America or whatever around the world. So obviously there's a massive influence from like hip hop and like rap culture of the last like 30 years, right? You want to talk about like gangster music, like Musiala has been quoting, Tupac. Yeah. I love Tupac. I love this and that. Well, Tupac got shot in his car, bro. You got people gunning for you? Not really. Say what you want.
Debatable right now.
Yeah, debatable. Yeah, sure.
Yeah,
right now. But like my point is that like there's sort of a really false narrative that's being projected, and for me it's like really unhealthy, and it's like really it's it's fake. First of all, it's disingenuous. It's fake.
Yeah.
Okay, because the majority of you guys, you're just acting hard for the sake of acting hard.
It's
Okay.
what sells, right?
It's what sells, and people did that in rap music too. Like
Yeah.
Ja Rule is like the like the epitome of that, right?
Yeah.
And he got called out, right? And then you have guys that are actually doing that, right? Like they're living that lifestyle, right? And that's fine. Like whatever, that's your struggle, right? And I guess some people identify with that music. But for the folks that don't, that are capitalizing off of this or trying to capitalize off of it, it's incredibly disingenuous, right? And it's, for me, it's not good music because it comes off as it's the same thing as like Garth Brooks. Like you want to talk about how much of a simple country man, just getting my Ford pickup, we're just going to drive down. But you're doing stadium
Relatable.
concerts. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
it's like you're not living the values you're embodying in your music.
Right. And it's a cultural change it creates too, that which can be negative, right? Like
there's so much intense negative attention towards it, where it's just like, you may not understand art illustrates life to an extent, right? Like you're describing, your struggle, and you're trying to illustrate or explain the things going on in your life, and that's a very honest and real thing, and that's really genuine. And then you have the idea that I think a lot of these guys are promoting right now, which is that their art is sort of projecting.
It's not an art. It's more like it's I guess you can say social media popularity. Their quest for that.
It's basically it's a performance.
So
it's
essentially what I have sort of like a theory, like in my friends groups and family, that I just call this the Instagram effect, right? And I'm not saying it's an Instagram thing necessarily. I mean, this goes beyond Instagram. Maybe you can argue Snapchat or whatever. But what I mean by Instagram effect is you're going to post a picture or video on Instagram, and you're probably going to take like 5 or 6 pictures before you post the one you post. On top of that, you're going to put filters on it, potentially edit it, blah, 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 potentially start posting a lot of stuff. And then people reach out to you, say, hey, you're posting a lot of sexy pictures there, Simran. Maybe you can wear our sunglasses in your sexy pictures. And maybe you can hang up our saws in your videos in the background. And, like companies like Horn and Feather might be asking you to do that. But at the same time, what I mean to say by that is it's not true. It's chosen, it's picked, it's showcased, and what you're showing and what you're showcasing is things that are I guess you're picking the best apple out of the bunch that you've picked, but you have the chance to go back and genetically modify that apple, aka edit, or put a filter on that apple to make it look redder than it is, right? Which is a big problem in India's food right now. That green lettuce people are eating that isn't real. So without going off on a tangent, what I'm trying to say is the music isn't really, in my opinion, authentic. And I don't say it's the music side of the song that isn't authentic. I think it's more about the lyrics, therefore the vocals, therefore the music that's behind it, and then subsequently the music video and stuff that's happening in there.
It comes down right to hey, you find something that you want to say that's true for you, and put it out there as genuinely as you can. I get, like, it's such an awesome thing that young kids are getting involved in Punjabi music, first of all. And if this is the way it's gonna go, then okay, whatever. Like, I'm just an old guy. Then that's all good. You know what I mean? But you can never go wrong with just being honest.
Yeah,
that's what I'm trying to say. You can never go wrong with just being honest. That's and true. Like the bigger thing for, like, the thing for me is, like, you can talk about how my point was, like, you talk about how art imitates life, right? But in this case, it's a lot about how life is imitating art. And so when you have a community where there isn't a lot of, how do I put this, cultural examples of success and cultural examples of people working in different industries other than, doctor, lawyer, engineer, and finding archetypes for the way to dress and the way to act and the way to behave and all this and that.
Yeah,
When you don't have role models, you make your own role models, right? And I think that's what's happening here is that,
well, when you say
there
role
is a
models,
bit.
sorry,
Well,
when
hang
you
on, just
say,
let me finish.
okay, go ahead. You finish your point, and then I got something to bring up about that.
Well, like, what I mean by all this is that, like, you're developing, regardless of whether you see it or not, is you're affecting communities
Yeah,
this way, right? And I'm not saying it's your responsibility or whatever, but understand that portraying an honest side to what's happening in your community is going to be a lot more important. And you can have as much pain and as much struggle and all these hardships as you want in that music, but just be honest about that struggle.
see, so
you want to talk about how you like, there's lots of things to talk about in our communities, and there's lots of stuff to discuss. You
well,
don't
speaking
need
of
to,
hip hop, that's why hip hop was so powerful. That's where it came from.
exactly. So like what my point is, like, I see it and I look at, like, I look at the perfect example for this, and it's a very old example, is Jazzy B's Surma.
I was just gonna say, yeah.
Okay, so like you talk about the themes in that opening stanza, right? He's talking about Hummers and bottles, in the back of the car.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, so yeah, so right away we were talking about, like, drinking, driving. It was fine, right? Like, alcohol is a common theme in Punjabi music, and
Yeah.
that's its own discussion. The guy, tell me how many Apne Mande knew what a Hummer was in 2003.
I was just gonna say, like, I
the year
think
before that album came out. Tell me,
GM is probably paying Jazzy royalties.
the royalties right now
I
because
was
of
gonna say,
Hummers they sold in 2004 when Romeo came out. That
Yeah.
and all yellow.
the fall
Going
of
to the
2000.
Gurdwara,
all
seeing all
yellow.
these Hummers all of a sudden, you're just like, what?
Tell me I'm wrong. Tell me I'm wrong. When
But
someone
here's
puts
the
you
thing.
onto a
Speaking
trend-
of, let me jump into this point real quick before we lose it in our discussion.
Yeah.
You were talking about, like, Punjabi music artists impacting the culture, the way the youth or the listeners and viewers are acting and being, right? So Jazzy B is the perfect example because I've interviewed him, and that interview's up on my SoundCloud, but the one thing you guys can listen to it in its entirety. But that interview, I ask him like that question, and he's like, yo, people dress like me, people do this. And he's not saying it in a cocky or shallow way. He was very humble, in my opinion, in that interview compared to a lot of artists I've interviewed. Won't name names right now, but
Yo, go off, King. Go off.
after that's a different point, and that is coming. But the point is that I'm kind of low key bigging up Jazzy B. So what I see Jazzy B in terms of on the camera, I guess you can say, in YouTube, in his songs, I loved it up until a certain point. Then I dropped, and I was like, not for me anymore.
That was Boot Bottle Sound.
It was that same Surma album where I related to about some of the songs, and then after that I sort of fell out with them. And it's not because
for me it was Mitra de Boot.
And Mitran de Boot was during that fall off motive. And I guess you can argue that a weird tangent is all the stuff he's done with Sukhshinder Shinda, in my opinion, have been gold, in different ways of looking at it, generally speaking.
As far as messaging goes,
there's structure to what he's doing in the album, right? There's folk songs, there's modern pop songs, there's something about, a mother or a love, a sort of sad song. There's a structure to all those albums, as many albums did have back in the day. And then there's one like Nachan Pangra Wala song, and then there's one like Party Up on Daru Pike, one of those songs, right? Like Surma, for example.
In the long format realm, like back when we had long format albums, that was generally the structure of an album.
And
right?
in those times, perhaps going into the evolution of being nothing but singles coming out,
Yeah.
I think loses that, okay, I'm just going to make this because it's cool and popular over and over and over and over again, opposed to
need
this
views,
album has multifaceted dimensions to it.
Yeah, where an
content.
artist could actually explain themselves a little bit or like come across with something.
Yeah, so shout out to Jazzy B, because I mean, as a banda, I really like the guy. As an artist, I can't relate to his content much since, I guess, that era that I alluded to. But I do need to say, Jazzy B, as a person, as a human, on Twitter right now with the Kisan movement, he's one of the guys up here, man, just holding it down. He's there in India too. Like, his family's not there. He can be here chilling, but he's down there with the people. I got to give him shout out for that.
For me,
it's interesting though, because like of Simran's points. So like what Simran is saying is it's a very ethically, morally driven responsibility that you're kind of expecting from an artist or for yourself, right? If you are an artist. But the reality is like a lot of people aren't interested in that or care about that. You know, they got to make the dollar, they got to do whatever,
just here
they
for the
have
vibes.
to kind of sell out for some things, or that's just what they enjoy, right?
Yeah,
which is cool, right? You know, you do your thing, but so it's hard to like it's really more like just depends on how you are and what you enjoy, right? Like I think like with us, like we kind of lean more towards like, you know, what bigger impact can you have? Just kind of like, well, people, you know, listeners might not know this, but we go back quite a bit amongst like the four of us, so, you know, and the three of us here right now on the call. So like for us, like a lot of these like kind of values have been instilled through us throughout like our life. So that's why it's like important for us and it's relevant, because like we think like for us, like the world, state of the world, social change, positive like cultural or like impact for like youth, you know, these things are really meaningful. But there is always that there's always gonna be, I think, and always has been, that other side of the token where you're gonna just get people just saying random shit that is meaningless, and because they want to make their money. Because I feel like the beat, the music itself, so production is what get people like, oh wow, this is a banger, right? And then when you listen to the lyrics, you're like, oh my god. Like when you actively listen to the lyrics on a lot of the songs, like even like let's talk about Dre's rap, for example. Like some of the best music production quality like ever, right? In terms of rap for me.
Dr. Dre.
But then when you listen to the lyrics, you're just like, okay. Right? And like his albums are like some of my favorite.
Not everything holds up. And that's the interesting thing is, and that's fine, right? In a vacuum, things change with history, right? You can't examine something from like 1955 in the context of like now and hold it to today's standards, because those standards have changed, right? Socially and morally and everything like that. You know, we expect more from the people that we pay money to, and we give our views to, and we give our attention to. That's what I'm saying, is that we expect more. And what I'm saying is like there's so much you can talk about and still be relevant, and still be like, you could still be coming out with bangers. But I want more from you. I know you got a lot of these people. I know they have the talent. That's the thing. Like if it's a banger, it's a banger.
I feel like that's kind of like Diljit is a good example of that, because like there was the content really wasn't super amazing at this, you know, throughout his career, but then now like there's a little bit more emphasis on kind of that whole more worldwide view.
A lot of
like,
people,
if you can do it once, the expectation is there.
Exactly.
Like then you have the identity of that, right? And that's the thing for me is like, okay, if you're gonna run around with like, you know, toy guns you got from Canadian Tire in your mom's, you know, minivan, and run burnouts in your driveway, that's cool.
But there's like an evolution of people as well too, like, you know, as artists, as individuals, like they change as well, like, and I feel like sometimes that music changes. Like if we're talking about genuine artists, right? Like, you know, you have Tupac, for example, like let's say is the greatest person in terms of social change in his music, or calling out the bullshit of the world, right? Of the system, you know, America, racism, those things. But then he also had like just super chill gangster songs, vibey as well. So it's like
just
it's interesting.
That's at the end of the day, you guys got to remember a song for so going into a little artistic mindset here, a song is a thought that leads to the song. So it could be like somebody like me and you and our viewers or listeners here. How many thoughts do you have in a day? Right. So you might take one thought and be like, huh, like I'm really thinking about this lately. I'm going to write it down. I'm going to put that on paper
Mhm.
or into your phone or whatever it is. And that turns into a song one day. Right. So like some back in the day, give you an example, rest in peace, our legend, Surdul Sikandar, you know, his stuff, man. I I love it. And when I listen to his stuff, I'm like, man, like for example, Jasbir Gunachoria, one of his lyricists.
Oh
I'm like,
man.
this guy felt something, man. He wrote it down. And an artist like Surdul was the only one who could bring that emotion out of the words back. So it starts with a thought, which is based on emotions and thoughts, onto paper. When you put it on paper, it's nothing but words. But to find that singer who can bring those emotions out is different. And I don't think that happens these days so much in all the sort of popular spectrum of the music. Speaking of Diljit, I was going to say there's icons in our industry. In our last show, episode 0, we did sort of like who's your greatest of all time, your GOAT in Punjabi music. I brought up Diljit, and personally speaking, I have so many favorite music artists. I can go really far back, but the reason I brought up Diljit is because he's now an icon, simply put. And
Yep. Yep.
as you were alluding to Jazzy B, Simran, and Khushwant, you were even saying like you can't relate to anybody right now or music right now for whatever. But here's the thing. Let me give you another guy that's low key. Shout out to him. And I know Khushwant, you really love this guy. And Simran, one of your points you brought, a few of your points actually. This is a music producer, and he doesn't bring out the most popular of popular guys, but you can see some of those artists that he has brought up have become really, really popular, and he's no longer working with them now. Or I'm not saying they've gotten into something. I'm just saying they've gone on to sort of chase that spotlight, and he's kind of like, yeah, enjoy. And I'm talking about Mani Sandhu. And Mani Sandhu, if nobody knows, he started off as a little kid with his patka in his little computer room on YouTube, and he was making beats on Reason, and it was just like, then you're here.
Watching his like making of videos
Yeah,
is really cool to me.
It's
because
cool.
in a time where everybody was being accused of ghost producing stuff and like all this and that, Mani Sandhu balled up and he was like, I'm gonna show you how I did this.
Yeah.
And he laid it out. And whether or not you enjoy his music or not, I'll always appreciate that, because the guy put it out there like, hey, this is me, this is what I believe in. And at the end of the day, it was such a positive message.
Yeah, and his music was wicked.
Kid,
like his vibes are sick.
Relatively self-taught, and he came out with bangers. It was bangers.
He's my favorite producer of the currently, right? Or like, I mean, he's not dropping so much stuff now, but like a lot of singles now. But like, yeah, like you said, Patwant, like he's like, I love this guy because he also embodies the 2000 urban UK sound, right? And that was probably my favorite sounds from the Punjabi industry like ever. And like that was a good he's referenced like I can't remember.
Well, so he's
anyways, like a lot of his inspirations are based off those guys.
Sangra Vibes.
Sangra Vibes. There you go.
So Sangra Vibes were two brothers. I was very fortunate not to have met them, but to work with them on a project as a musician on my end, on the Dud album by Monarchy, and a lot of that. So I worked with RDB as a musician, so I played tabla, but Sangra Vibes, that was probably they had their album called Unleashed, and then that Monarchy album, Dud, was their sort of second most amount of work in an album. And the songs they made were like, wow, like insane. Like we all have the same sample packs recorded. Like, I mean, I can't necessarily play them for you at this moment, but what they did with something, so let's say you record a sarangi, right, in the studio to a song, and you give it to them, what they're going to do with that vibe they create with it compared to like somebody else it was very magical sounding. It was very magical. I think that's the best word for it. And then they sort of didn't really continue. One of them actually had some health complications and passed away, one of the two brothers. Then Mani Sandhu comes along, and he's actually buddies with the remaining Sanger Vibes brother, inspired by them, and sort of took their sound and, I guess you can say, refined it, made it sound better, arguably, and
modern,
more modern, I guess, more
modern,
cleaner,
yeah.
and put it out there, and sort of took something that I heard early. When I heard it was 2005. Most of the world heard Sanger Vibes in 2006-7, but wow, like it was something that people wanted. And the artist he's worked with, Navan Sandhu, Jasmine Sandlas, Amar Sandhu, Nirmal Sidhu, Bakshi Billah, Manaki, for like, and the thing is, he doesn't keep working with the same artist over and over.
Yeah,
and
he
over.
doesn't. He's never had like this is my main person.
Yeah. And here's the thing, like Diljan, rest in peace, who also passed away lately, like so many Surile artists going, but Diljan's my favorite song of Diljan is the one with Mani Sandhu producing it. Nal Nachna, was it Nal Nachna, I think? Yeah. And then, you know, like he did a couple of songs with some major artists. He did a song with Diljit, right? Jindamai. But he's not like chasing these artists and just making songs of them left and right. It's more like those artists are approaching him saying, oh, let's make a song, and he does it. And then he's like, hey, whatever, it's done.
Yeah, so, it's interesting. Like, and even that is just like it's moving farther and farther away from the direction in which, like, I guess we can narrow it down to like Punjabi music in North America, the direction in which that's going. It's just, I find that to be a really distinctly interesting and different direction. I'd like to see better music come out of Canada. Or I guess more honest music come out of Canada. You know, I won't criticize people's truth. Like whatever life you live is what you live. I don't really care. But when I see that that's all that you have in your repertoire, buddy, like, do something. It's that guy that has like, that's just like names his like top 10 favorite movies, and they're all like Godfather Part 1, 2, 3, and then like it's like Scarface.
Oh,
and
let's just
like,
be honest. It's like we're referencing like a Surrey Jack kind of.
Yeah, that's it. So I'm like what? So literally,
or West Coast. It could be the Brampton guys too. But
yeah, you're.
I know. I'm just that vibe. Right?
And we went to school with that guy. We all know at least 3 of those guys we went to junior high with.
And like we're not from Millwoods ourselves, right?
Yeah, they're the
like,
same.
More like
they're the same guy.
500 of those guys.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Here's the thing, guys.
They're the same guy. They're the same guy they were in junior high. Is what I'm saying.
Let me give you an interesting relation, okay?
Like, bro, you haven't read nothing since then. You haven't listened to anything since then. Nothing's happened to you.
You haven't had a job since then.
Yeah, like what have you been up to? Oh, yo, just grinding, yo. Like we've been out here.
Yo, just at the club, man. Just, you know, like just you know, just
do my thing, dog. Just same, really.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Like.
Anyways,
it's like, yo, dude, we're 35 now, and you're still doing that. Cool.
Yo, bro, just out here chilling, yo. Let me tell you.
Yeah, but then there's like cool people like Prophecy, who's like created like a really different, like brought in like I guess like a vibe, a pop kind of style. Like, I don't know if that's what you want to say. Like that's really unique too.
And like, yo, like you can be street and you can be hard as like, I mean, look, Ice Cube made a whole living off of being that angry black guy.
Yeah,
he's basically that in all of his movies. He's that in all of his songs. Like, you know what I mean? That's cool. But
he lived that life.
Yeah, he lived that life.
You know?
Yeah, you can't be doing that, you know, having, you know, grown up in like,
it's just not genuine, you know what I mean?
You know, here, let me give you guys a little spin,
yeah,
not to be devil's advocate, but
out here.
We as listeners of music, who knows, there might have been an artist who went through some, you know, hard times and raps or sings about it. We don't know these things. But at the same time, I wanted to link something. Like, we're all talking about these artists, Punjabi artists specifically, who are referencing, you know, hip hop music, like specifically West Coast hip hop music artists, and, you know, trying to be like them, for lack of better terms. So let me give you a weird analogy. If you take sort of the social injustices that led to not just West Coast, but generally hip hop culture in the 70s, 80s, 90s, and the poverty and the freedom from poverty to freedom and liberation through that hip hop music. That's what hip hop is. It was an expression, poetry of a group of people, of a culture, of a society, and they brought themselves out through that music. And now people like, you know, in the hip hop scene, Dr. Dre is partners with companies like Apple, and you know, I love it. He's my favorite hip hop artist, period, in all aspects. But at the end of
I
the
was
day,
saying that like his music's incredible, right?
Yeah.
but the thing is, in
yeah.
Punjab, okay, so these Punjabi artists here, maybe they haven't had a social injustice. Now, with the Kisan movement aside,
Sure, you can talk about the lasting legacy of the kind of trauma.
sure, but I'm trying to take this back now to Punjab. Okay.
Oh yeah,
So-
like what I'm saying is like that lasting, like when you have the kind of oppression that's occurred in Punjab for as long as it has,
yeah.
right? Like economic and political and like and otherwise, right?
So that type of music,
over like what, like 300 years, it's gonna come through in your culture. You're gonna
in the general
have,
culture, it's embedded in the culture and things like that. But you know, there's artists. Now I'm going to give you a really strange name in the topic we're discussing. Okay, so Kanwar Garewal.
That's not
This
a strange
guy,
name.
that's an interesting.
this guy is, to me, in terms of black and white comparisons, what these early hip hop artists, you can argue the topic and content of Ice Cube's writing in NWAA's
But he's Nas.
days.
He's
What's
your Nas.
that?
He's your Nas.
Yeah, Nas even, right?
Yeah.
Like Nasir or Nas, whatever. And then you got Kanwar Garewal, who is popping out songs left and right about this Kisan movement, which is a social injustice happening in India right now to many groups of people. And he's singing about them and he's trying to motivate them. And, you know, there's not just him, there's many other artists doing different things like that. And you could argue in our modern era of Punjabi culture that those moments are happening right now. And so who's to say that maybe in the next, maybe our kids' generation, the music they listen to is very inspiring and powerful, like early hip hop. I hope so too.
Hope so. Yeah.
Yeah, I really hope so too.
To your point, like for Canadian music, and I'll leave it on this, is just like for those communities to have gone through what they went through, that kind of oppression.
Yeah.
Like when you talk about Ice Cube and that sort of thing, you understand like the generations of oppression that, you know, African American communities and Latino communities face in the United States, and in Canada you have First Nations communities facing the same thing today.
Yeah, very good point. Glad you said that. Yeah.
You see that, and then you see the contrast in opportunity that immigrant communities have had, and most of them like first generation or you know, landed immigrant communities in Canada today. They don't I know the kind of hardships my parents faced.
Yeah.
It's a different struggle for us versus them.
To relate that to the context of the struggle of African American people or the struggle of First Nations communities in Canada or the United States or whatever, I think that's really disingenuous.
It can be for sure
that, like, because Ice Cube did this back then, that the same context applies now. We can't apply the historical context or our present context to Dr. Dre's music now, because that same sort of parallel doesn't exist. Like, you listen to DMX, God rest him, a lot of his stuff doesn't hold up, and it doesn't need to, because in his time he spoke his truth, right?
Yeah.
That era was sort of the era of struggle for hip hop and a lot of generations.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. The reason
time.
why this is so disingenuous to me is that I live that truth now. My parents came here, they had their struggles, and for large communities across Canada, that struggle, that reality is the same for many of us.
Yeah.
We're all growing up as first generation Canadians. Those of us that are
Yeah.
growing up as first generation Canadians
Most
with
of
that
us,
same
yeah.
sort of context, right? Most of us. And those of us that aren't, that are coming here, right, are growing up with are here with the same context as, let's say, my dad, who came here at 25 to marry
Yeah.
my mom.
Just trying to make it.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Just trying to make it. But to suggest that context is the same, it takes a very intense degree of privilege just to afford to immigrate to Canada, with all the IELTS and all the things you got to do, and you got to run all this stuff. Immigration takes a lot of money.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And then to come here
And
to
what
get
if
yourself
you're
set up,
fleeing something that's
or
oppressive over there?
you're fleeing something. You're fleeing something over there.
Refugees,
To suggest the context is the same is disingenuous.
It's
And what I'm
definitely
saying
not
is,
the same context, but a lot of parallels for sure.
A lot of parallels. But what I'm saying is, tell me how you really feel. You're hiding behind a caricature of what you think a struggle is, or a fashionable example of struggle. Tell me what your actual struggle is.
Yeah, cool. And then I think I'll end on that also. We talked about the impactful music, right? Lyrics meaning something, representing something in your
That's what I'm
art
saying.
form. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of a group Patwant, you talked about, hip hop, the hip hop movement, what it really was at that time, the revolutionary kind of aspect of it, right? Calling out the system.
Yeah.
But for me also, reggae was like that too. And
100%.
I've stumbled across some really game-changing reggae.
Reggae was a revolution.
The whole black struggle. Steel Pulse is a group I stumbled upon, and oh my god, listening just to some of their music, it was so transformational for me. They just did such a great job of they're just putting their stuff out there, right? Just, I don't want to use the terminologies they're using, but it's so great in the way they did it, and that's genuine, right? That's the stuff you remember, and that's what you could be like, okay, yeah.
We know what the struggle is. We live the struggle. I have yet to see an artist encapsulate that struggle
in this era, you're saying.
So let me end it with a question for you, because it made me think of something. If you could pick one Punjabi artist, no era constraints, that is actually a true reflection of his or her struggle, who comes to mind first? See, it's a very loaded question.
I don't know, because this is my own problem, but my ability to understand Punjabi language isn't that strong. But I feel like Gurdas Man was somebody.
Yeah, I was just gonna say the same thing. He got flamed for sitting the fence. He sat on the fence. For so long.
A lot of the shit he's done recently, but he's done a lot in his career before that, and whatever the his affiliations in terms of who he believes in, who he all that stuff. But he has also done some work. There's a body of work there. And like I said, I can't speak to it 100%. I'm not backing him anyways, but I'm just saying there is a lot of frame of reference for or not frame of reference, but a lot of people have spoken that his lyrics are have been really
relatable.
Yeah.
So I'll just try to encompass my question here by giving my exemplar of this. So to me, I think in current music, and it's okay if you don't know it's the answer or have somebody in mind, but maybe our listeners or viewers can comment below and let us know who they think it is. In my personal opinion, I think the only artist who's being really true and speaking about their real struggle and just saying how it is for them, the way Simran you were alluding to currently, as well as doing other things that are still flamboyant and being popular, is Karan Aujla. And because he's been through some stuff personally, and I'm sure every human has in one way or another, but he's also an artist and he talks about his personal stuff.
That's really fair.
And I think that he's the guy right now.
I think, I think his affiliations with certain other artists deserve some criticism. But for a guy that's been writing his own stuff and then being able to perform it at such a high level and
Yeah.
come out with bangers. That's he speaks his truth a lot of the time. And like for me, a lot of his songs, while there's some aspect to that sort of co-opting that sort of West Coast gangster lifestyle, right? That sort of Latina community influence, which is whatever. That's California kids for you. He also has some very, very honest, intense lyrics, which can catch you off guard because you'll be vibing down the street and you're just like, oh shit, what did he say? And it, like, you got to sit there and you got to think about it, and it runs through your head for a while, and you don't realize it. And I do appreciate a lot of his stuff. Yeah. That's a really good one.
All right, boys. Well, I think, that's a pretty loaded episode. We didn't get to our third point, general sports talk, but we'll get to that next show when Dhadwal is back, rightfully so.
Cool.
Take some Claritin, Dhadwal. Hopefully you might need Benadryl, but it's allergy season in Edmonton, Alberta, Northern Canada.
Yes, sir.
A lot of our North American listeners and viewers will
it's hot
totally relate to
too,
that.
Yeah, those of you out there that are itchy boys, get your steroid creams out. And
Yo, let's make a hip hop group about itchy boys, and I'm sure it'll be the truth and very relatable.
Yeah.
Just everybody wearing wool sweaters.
No, 100% cotton is the best you can do right now if you have these problems.
Oh man. All right.
But I just wanted to leave this show. First of all, thanks Khushwant Singh and Simran Kharal for being with us today on Pardesi Beats Unplugged. But I'm gonna leave this with a little mystery, okay? And then I'm gonna literally cut it there. All right, here's the mystery. Just Rain is back.